on first down. They hand off to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. And again, it's picked off. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with a second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac. Kenny Moore gets to Deshaun Watson. That's a sack for Kenny Moore. Kenny has a pick and now a sack in the game.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice podcast. I'm your co-host, Cody Felger. As always, joining me, Derek Larger. Derek, how you doing, man? Are you staying safe? Are you staying quarantined? How's the no sports life? How's it going, man?
I'm staying safe, staying indoors whenever I get the chance. I mean, other than working and, occasionally going outside for basketball, not really doing anything else. So, staying safe, social distancing at its finest. So yeah, I'm living the good life.
Yeah. So you're one of those people who your job did not shut down, so you're still out there working and doing stuff.
Yep, still am doing it. So yeah. I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. That's kind of the same with my work. They actually gave us like some papers and stuff today. So like starting tonight, I'm in Indiana. They're going to be doing like a kind of like quarantine stuff this Tuesday night, basically saying like you cannot leave your house unless you are going for groceries or essential stuff or going to work. And so like I have to have papers in my car. I have a discount card. I have to show them all that if I get pulled over, because I don't know what they're going to do to people like if they're actually not. And I don't know. It's just a weird situation. But anyway, yeah, I totally get you there. It's kind of a crazy time right now. But like I said, man, in a tweet, like, this is the perfect time for us to try to develop as much content and push as much content out there as we can for all of our listeners. All you guys are tremendous. We love you guys. We really appreciate the support that you guys give us. As always, we have kind of this playlist of the 2020 off season, and that's just a playlist, man, that if you're sitting there and you're don't really know what to do, I would encourage you to go through that list. Shameless plug there. Go through that list and look at some of our stuff going all the way back, from January till now. It's a pretty great amount of content there. So it can keep you held over for a while. So I would highly encourage you to do that. Derek, so moving on to the topic today. So it's been officially now a week since the Colts made that blockbuster trade to trade their number 13th overall pick to the 49ers for defensive tackle stud DeForest Buckner. It's been exactly a week now. So a week ago, the Colts made this trade. And, there's been a lot of opinions on this trade, mostly positive. There's been some people who think maybe the Colts gave up a little too much draft capital there. But overall, it's been a good response from Colts fans overall. DeForest Buckner certainly seems like he's super happy to be here. Again, he was a defensive leader on that very, very stout 49ers defense that, led them to the Super Bowl last year. He even got a sack in that Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. So he's just a guy, man, that from all accounts, he's worth that number 13th overall pick. I know you talked about that, Derek, in the other video that you made about how the Colts went from a B list team, I guess, to an A team. You talked about that and mentioned that, the guys that you see there at 13, you hope they become what DeForest Buckner. He's definitely a game wrecker in the interior. He definitely solves probably, I would argue, the second biggest need. I would argue the Colts at least temporarily addressed their number one need, and I think that's quarterback. Obviously, you think defensive tackle was number one. Regardless, how Colts needed to address it, and they definitely did in a major way. And that leads us, Derek, to the point of this video and the topic of this video, and it's this question here. And I'm going to pose this question. You and I are going to kind of give our takes on this question. So our question is, how good is the Colts defense with the addition of DeForest Buckner? And we can just start talking about it, and then we can get into more specifics. and we'll probably give you a little bit of our take on, we mentioned like the AFC South. Andrew and I a couple nights ago recorded that about how we think the Colts have the best defensive line in the AFC South. So definitely check that one out. But Derek, we can just start talking about here. How good do you think this helps this Colts defense, and how much do you think it'll help them improve from 2019 to 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's almost like, what does any defense do? How do they improve when they get a potential all-pro defensive tackle on their defensive line? In regards to the defensive line itself, I agree that at face value, the Colts would have the best defensive line at this moment. Just with, obviously DeForest Buckner being around that level of a JJ Watt, maybe even above. And, Kamuko Ture coming back, he showed flashes very early in the season that he could, be a real game wrecker. There is that potential. It's just hard to really say how good I think this defensive line actually is, just because the last memory we know of them, they were really bad. So, we just obviously have to see DeForest Buckner play. We have to see the defensive line actually stay healthy for the most part and get ready. In regards to like how they rank for like the overall defensive lines in the NFL, you could definitely make the argument that they're a mid-tier defensive line right now. I would probably say a little closer to around that 17 to 18 mark just right now, just off of the simple fact that we still, again, do not know what we're going to get out of this defensive line. Obviously, we know Justin Houston did really well last season. We don't know Jabal Sheard's going to be back. DeForest Buckner obviously coming in. How is Autry going to have a bounce back year? Again, it's like I'm going to be optimistic. As soon as that defensive line starts picking it up, then obviously I'm going to be quick to put them, in amongst some of the better defensive lines in the NFL. It's just that right now they were not good last year, except for one or two pieces, and that's it. So in regards to how it actually helps the defense, I mean, this team was the 13th ranked defense last season. It was 12 or 13. Adding a pass rusher with the capabilities of a DeForest Buckner definitely moves your team up at least one or two spots. So there is the possibility that this Colts defense can now be a top 10 defense with the addition of a DeForest Buckner, because that added a new element to this team, which we talked about all week, about him getting pressure up the middle, which forces a quarterback to go outside, which is exactly what we need for our DEs. This is an element that this Colts defense was missing, and therefore it hurt them in the passing game a lot. And, even with that, this defense still was one of the top half defenses in the league. So adding a DeForest Buckner really, really helps. And it would not surprise me with this addition that the Colts could possibly go into a top 10 defense this upcoming year with the addition of a DeForest Buckner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made some good points there, Derek. One thing that I think is interesting with a guy of the caliber of DeForest Buckner now is I think he will obviously command a lot of double teams, which will free up a lot of your guys. You mentioned Danico Autry, a guy who in 2018 almost had 10 sacks. Like, he almost had double-digit sacks. And then you look at, Kamoko Ture, who was really turning it on before that gruesome injury in Kansas City. You see Ben Banogu, a guy who flashed at times. He just needs to put it together a little bit more. So you got two good pass rushers there. You mentioned Justin Houston, 11 sacks last year. If you bring back Jabal Sheard, or if you get into the free agent defensive end market, there are a few guys there that you could potentially look at, taking Sheard's place there at that other defensive end spot. And some guys who are more of run defenders as opposed to getting after the passer, which I think is more of Jabal Sheard's kind of style of play. Just a better, just a good overall player. He's not great at anything. I would say he's a above average run defender, but Obviously the sacks speak for themselves. He's never really had double-digit sacks in his career. So, saying all that, it's just, I think, it definitely helps this defense tremendously. That is something that we saw last year, with the defensive tackles. I mean, 2018, man, Danico Autry, who I already mentioned, and Margus Hunt, who has now been cut. I mean, they were dominant in the middle. I mean, they really were. They got a lot of pressure from that 3 technique and that nose tackle position. But for whatever reason, they both kind of fell off, and Margus Hunt more than Danico Autry. But they really, it was insane, the decline that we saw at that interior defensive line. And so going from a 2019 version of Margus Hunt to a DeForest Buckner, a guy who just turned 26, a guy who's entering his prime, a guy that's shown that he can be a game wrecker. When he, is asked to get sacks, he got sacks there in 2018 before D Ford and before they drafted Nick Bosa last year. I mean, DeForest Buckner was a game wrecker on that defense. I think he probably led the 49ers in sacks in 2018. And so, saying all that, man, I think it really helps your defense in a lot of ways. I mean, first off, obviously it frees up other guys, which I already mentioned. The other thing, it helps out your secondary tremendously, and also your linebacker. It helps out everybody behind you. Your linebackers more so in the run game, I would say, and also the pass game, obviously. But the run game, because, I played defensive tackle when I was in high school. And I remember my friend who was a linebacker, he always told me, man, one thing I like from my defensive tackles is not when they're getting pushed back into me, when they can eat blocks and allow me to go make the play. And so that's what DeForest Buckner does. And he can also make plays as well. He's not just the guy that's going to do that, but, he'll command it. He'll free up Darius Leonard, Bobby Okereke, Anthony Walker, EJ Speed. All those guys will be freed up because of DeForest Buckner wrecking that offensive line, honestly. So it's something, man, where it helps your linebackers in that way. And obviously, when you get a guy that gets sacks, it helps everybody. With your defensive backs, it helps because, man, they don't have to stay in coverage so long. I feel like honestly, yes, the Colts defensive backs had their warts last year. They weren't perfect. They had some really bad games. But I mean, you look at it, man, beyond Justin Houston, the Colts didn't have anybody consistently getting after the passer. And so, beyond the 11 sacks, the Colts really didn't have anybody consistently, changing a game. And so DeForest Buckner is a game changer in that way. And now you have, guys who, in Justin Houston and DeForest Buckner, who have posted double-digit sacks in their career multiple times. So it's just somebody, man, who just allows everybody to, and also allows your coaches as well, to just breathe easier at night, knowing that there's going to be a guy in there you don't have to worry about, a guy in there that's done it before, a guy in there who is I would argue, top 3-4 player at his position. And I think it's just tremendous, man. I mean, that's kind of my take on really this Colts defense and what DeForest Buckner says. Do you have anything else you wanted to add, Derek, to this DeForest Buckner, this trade and what it means for the entire defense? I know I kind of touched on it, but anything else you would like to add?
No, I mean, I think that's everything. I feel like I'm going to get some pushback for saying that our defensive line is not improved as much as I've been saying that it would be after this. Again, I'm just kind of thinking to the aspect of I need to see the product on the field first before I'm going to crown this defensive line being as almighty improved.
Oh, that's totally fair. I mean, on paper, it looks really good. It looks promising. The Colts defensive line looks ascending, but we've seen it so many times in the NFL. We've even seen it with the Colts, man. Back when they went all in, right? They signed a bunch of players and were like, the Colts are going to the Super Bowl. We see what happened. They went 8-8. So you just don't know, man. You just don't know until you see it on the field. If it is as good as we are projecting and as we think it can be. I mean, this is one of the better defensive lines in the league for sure, especially if some of those young guys develop in the edge and also in the interior. So, that's all I got here for this one, man. I know you had some Twitter questions, Derek. You posted from the Twitter account earlier today. What are some of those Twitter questions that we can answer for some of our people? I always like hearing back from our fans and from our followers and listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a list of 3 questions here. And we'll go through these 3, and then if we get some more, we'll probably tackle that into another podcast episode. Maybe I'll do one and Cody will do one, whatever we get. Just depends how many we have. But here is the first one. So obviously the one that we've been talking about a lot over the last few days with the Brissett still being on the roster. The question is, what is the justification for not cutting Brissett? Or are the Colts still hoping for a trade to get something out of Brissett?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he got the $7 million, I believe it was, for not being cut or traded by Sunday. So I think it's something, man, where people are saying I don't expect Jacoby Brissett to be traded. I'm kind of like, well, I just think that you keep him on the roster for now. Yeah, he's pretty expensive for a backup quarterback, but I mean, Philip Rivers is, I know he's played a lot of games, but this is the NFL, and man, when you get older with father time, your body isn't the same it used to be. So Philip Rivers goes down, man. Don't really have a guy that can step in there and is familiar with this offense as it stands right now. But it's kind of, for me, I'm okay with what the Colts did. Obviously, I would have liked them to trade Jacoby Brissett. If I was making the decisions, I would. But I think it's something, man, where, right now, if you don't go the route of drafting a quarterback in the first couple rounds, I think that Jacoby Brissett's fine to have on your roster there for 2020. I really do. I know he'll be a bit expensive, but it's good to have a good backup, and I think Jacoby Brissett's a solid backup in this league. And if you do draft a quarterback early, man, you can still trade Jacoby Brissett and save a lot of money and save a lot of cap room there. So it's not like, because the Colts didn't do this before the deadline, they absolutely cannot trade Jacoby Brissett. Excuse me. I think they definitely can, and I think it's on the table still. Don't quote me on that, and don't say, I said anything like that, but I don't think it's completely out of, the realm of possibility here.
Yeah, and this question was from Jason Sanders. So Jason, thank you for the question. I don't mind keeping Brissett around, but the issue is just the money. I don't want to be spending $15 million on a backup quarterback that we may not use. This kind of leads me to the thing of, I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. If you're keeping Brissett around, then why would you draft a quarterback? I mean, it's just I don't think you're going to want to spend that kind of money. It's confirmed. If they keep Brissett, then I think, to me personally, that makes me think they are not going quarterback at all this year. Now, if they do get rid of Brissett, then I can understand who they would be trying to get somebody in the second round. Could be a Jalen Hurts, Jacob Eason, and Anthony Gordon. But this justification for not cutting Brissett, maybe just the Colts are not. They know they backed themselves into a position with giving up that 13th pick for DeForest Buckner. They know they have their limited options. Unless somehow, some way, Jordan Love or Herbert falls to a point where the Colts could snag them late in the first or even in the second, then I don't understand. I don't see them trying to, move on from Brissett. It just stinks, all that extra money just being wasted on a guy that's most likely not going to play much. All right.
Yeah. I mean, something that I thought was interesting. Sorry, before to interrupt.
Yeah, you're good.
Something that I thought was interesting. Did you see the thing about Tom Brady and the Colts, about Tom Brady's camp was interested in the Colts, but the Colts weren't interested in Tom Brady? Did you kind of read that and kind of read the whole thing? The thing that I found really interesting was the Colts, decided they wanted Philip Rivers on a short-term deal, which I think is really interesting. I think that could potentially speak to the Colts drafting a quarterback, because, if you really were like, we're not drafting a quarterback, why not go after a Tom Brady, right? Or why not sign Philip Rivers to a 2-year deal or whatever it is? I think it just, maybe it's something where they just want to evaluate Philip Rivers and not be tied to him. But I think that's just interesting to me. Like, why would you prefer that? I don't know. It just is an interesting tidbit. Maybe it could mean nothing, but to me that could speak, well, maybe that means the Colts are in the quarterback market in the draft. I don't know, but yeah, go ahead to the next question.
Gotcha. All right. This next question is for Nate. And speaking of quarterbacks to be drafted, his question goes hand in hand with this one. What's a more likely option? The Colts either drafting a quarterback this upcoming draft in 2020 or in 2021.
Ooh, that's a good one. Derek, since you just talked on this, you go first on this one.
Yeah, me personally, I think that yeah, it really does depend what happens in the next month. What we're gonna see throughout the next few days is what you're really gonna figure out with how this team views their quarterback situation. Me personally, I think they will probably wait to get a quarterback until 2021, like Nate suggested. Just because of the limited options that they have right now. They're most likely going to have a first round draft pick next year that I hope they don't trade back this time. But yeah, I just think the options are so limited that and we just don't know what Chris Ballard's going to actually do with those 2 second rounders. Again, he could trade up. He could decide a Jalen Hurts or a Jacob Eason or someone is worth a chance to take on. I don't see it. But there are other options, and there's going to be some quarterbacks that will probably go slip into the late first round next year. I think just as it stands for me personally right now, I think that it's most likely that the Colts will draft a quarterback in 2021. So 2 years from now, over a year from now, rather than this upcoming year.
Yeah, it speaks to what, kind of what the Colts moves have been here in free agency. Obviously, they've only signed one guy, Philip Rivers, but to me, that seems like, and did you hear kind of DeForest Buckner talking about that? He said when the Colts signed Philip Rivers, he said, that speaks to me. They want to win now. Like they're ready to go. So that could be something, man, where the Colts are just like, we're going to put all our chips in this basket right now. We're going to try to do some things. And they were rumored potentially to be interested in Delaney Walker, who's up there in age. And so maybe the Colts are rearing up and they think we have a good shot. We have a solid core at the roster. We just need to add a few veteran guys. And also, if these guys don't work, if Philip Rivers is absolutely terrible next year, then the Colts are like, okay, we don't have to re-sign you. Like, it's not like the Colts are doing what Ryan Grigson and company did, where they're signing old, aging guys to multi-year contracts, and you can't get out of those contracts, and it screws you over for years and years. But to me, it seems like they're definitely in win now mode. So I'm going to agree with you, Derek. I think it's most likely, unless something crazy happens in the draft, which it can, we all know this, but I think most likely the Colts will probably try to build around Philip Rivers right now with this year. If they're all in like that, maybe get him another wide receiver or two, maybe get him a tight end, try to do things like that and continue to build into this defense because, they have the familiarity with Rivers, Frank Reich, Nick Sirianni. They all have that familiarity. So they probably feel good there. I just think, man, it's most likely right now the Colts try to give Philip Rivers weapons and then they try to address the future of the quarterback position in 2021. I think that's the most likely option for me.
All right. And last question that we have is from Parker Finnegan. Asked, would you be against signing 1 or 2 more veterans to 1-year deals to really push this Colts team into the Super Bowl conversation?
I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. And we've talked about this a little bit, Derek. We've talked about a guy like Everson Griffin, the Vikings. He's a veteran guy, but he's still got some juice there. Speaking of bring the juice. But yeah, like I would not be opposed to signing some of those guys to 1-year prove it deals. And to me, it's like if those guys don't pan out, if they Andre Johnson, if they Todd Hermans, that's fine. Say see you later. Hey, you had a great career. Hope you enjoy retirement. That's what I think it's likely. Honestly, I do. I think the Colts can do it. They have the cap space now with cutting Brian Hoyer, trading Pierre Desir. They can sign a corner if they want to. Logan Ryan's a popular name. Maybe they sign a wide receiver. They draft a couple wide receivers. Whatever they do, I think it's likely. I really do. I think it's something that the Colts, if they're really adamant about Philip Rivers only has a couple of years left, we only have him on a 1-year deal. Let's see where we can go this year with the young talent on this roster and add a few more talented veterans. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, for the right price, I would be more than happy to sign a couple more guys. I mean, everyone's kind of been talking about Jadeveon Clowney, and how much we would actually be willing to give up for him. It just depends on what's going to happen with the price. Everybody has a price, and Chris Ballard certainly likes to stick to the number that he has for guys. So, I'm not opposed to the idea of bringing in a couple more guys if those guys are better than what we do. It's again, the people that are saying, are we going to stunt the growth of our young guys? Well, I mean, not necessarily. It's just over the simple fact that, you want to put the best option on the field, and we're obviously in win now mode, or at least we feel that our roster is up to that point where we feel we can do that. It just, depends how much more explosive our offense is. Because I think our defense, as it sits right now, is, closer than than many others. I mean, I think our defense overall is better than the Chiefs' defense overall. And, the Chiefs practically shut down the 49ers late in the game when it mattered to give Patrick Mahomes a chance. If our offense can be anything similar to that, and, something close, and then our defense being as good as it can be, it's a quite possibility. It just depends on who that is and how much are you spending.
That is key there. But one thing, man, that Chris Ballard has talked about is the veteran leadership and the lack of it last year that the Colts had. So bringing in a couple veterans, a couple guys, DeForest Buckner, we think will hold guys accountable. Phillip Rivers, we know will hold guys accountable. Bringing in a couple other guys, especially on that defensive side of the ball, I would not be opposed. And adding some guys to give Phillip Rivers some options, I'm not opposed to that at all. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and that's all the questions that we got for the podcast right now. Thank you guys, everyone who's uploaded some so far, and if there are more that keep coming in, we'll be sure to answer more of them as they come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I hope you guys enjoyed the new intro. I mean, I was texting Derek on my way back from work, and I was like, dude, this I like listened to it again, and it was getting me pumped up for Colts football. I am so excited for Colts football. Even if the Colts were to go 0-16, that intro would get me pumped up because it was fantastic. Shout out to my guys, Lawrence at Colts Law on Twitter, and then at AK Riley 5 on Twitter. Those guys are fantastic. They did a phenomenal job. Lawrence did the audio. Riley did the video stuff. They are fantastic. Definitely find them. Give them a follow. They are awesome people. I think that about wraps up this podcast. Thank you guys as always. And as always, go Colts.